Hello there, this is Cassia,
And this is Coden.
and welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast where we discuss the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games and proposed movie adaptations, as well as Star Wars news. This is episode 3, and this is where the Senate begins. So, the first topic we wanted to talk about today is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We saw the news that Catherine Powell, British businesswoman, she had been president of Disney Parks Western region, overseeing Disneyland, Disney World, and Disneyland Paris for about 15 plus years, has been some words thrown around. I've seen the word fired, I've seen the word eliminated, leaving, stepping down, or left. So either she was forced out or asked to step aside. We don't know the whole story, but she's out. And right now, Galaxy's Edge is open in Disneyland and Disney World, but it's been a little bit empty. Not as many people have been attending, and I don't know if that's just because Disneyland and Disney World ticket prices have kind of soared, as has the Disney hotel prices, but it is not as full as has been projected. Talking to some people who have been there, all of them have said it was not crowded at all. They didn't really have to wait for the ride on the Millennium Falcon at all, and they would just kind of walk around. It was cool to see, but they're not major Star Wars fans, so they're not going to spend all of their time in the gift shops making like a $300 lightsaber, or spending a whole lot of time in the gift shops buying various merchandise. So, what are your thoughts, Coden?
It's been a pretty interesting story because I think the park opened up, back in May?
Yeah.
And back in May, it was almost like Disney. I mean, naturally they didn't want it to fail, but they basically set up all this prep work to make it fail. There's a lot of talk about how it's going to be crowded. You know, the hotels didn't help very much. They all cranked up their prices, making it extremely expensive to stay. Disney, to prepare for a crowd at the same time while deterring people from coming, was they set up very limited access into Galaxy's Edge, which led to a pretty empty park, regardless if people took advantage of the kind of like the early park entrance or customers waited to now. We looked at an account by a YouTuber by the name of Jenny Nicholson, where she, to guarantee a spot into, or it wasn't even a guarantee, it was all in hopes that she would be admitted into Galaxy's Edge. She ended up going through 3 or 4 different reservations in hopes that one of them would let her through. And so, you know, she was able to come in and kind of experience a little bit of what the park had to offer. I also follow another YouTuber who's more of a Star Wars collector, but his experience, which we can talk a little bit about later, is his experience with kind of what I would consider the main event of Galaxy's Edge, which is the build your own lightsaber exhibit, which, you know, we can cover here in a moment, where it's almost anti the Disney theme of why Disneyland exists in the first place.
Okay, and I did some checking, and it looks like Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge opened May 31st, 2019, and the Disney World in the Hollywood Studios park opened August 29th, 2019.
Okay.
So they're both pretty recent. So, what would you say that Krabok's experience was at Galaxy's Edge?
So as a collector, he really focused on the building of the lightsaber. He had his kids with him. He's talking about how it was just him and two boys, and it was almost paraphrasing what he was saying, but it was almost like he wasn't going to be able to bring in both of his kids into like the experience. How they have it set up is, in his experience was, he was able to go in and he was able to bring one member with him. But due to some finagling, he was able to bring both his boys in there with him, which is pretty surprising to me. Disneyland's theme is to have a family experience, and if you can't go to like a particular exhibit as a family, it defeats kind of their whole mission statement as a theme park. It kind of a little bit more back to like what I think is the case is those that buy a lightsaber can bring somebody with them. These lightsabers are like $250 a piece. So if I just imagine that it's possible that he only wanted to afford one lightsaber, and so the repercussion of that is he was only able to bring in one of his kids with him, but they eventually let him bring in both at the same time. And so it makes sense as far as what Galaxy's Edge current kind of outlook is, as far as what some of these reviews have been, is to get people into the park and then out of the park as soon as possible, where like an individual guest can come in, they can build their lightsaber, they could check out the rest of the exhibits and then they can leave, is kind of my take on kind of how Galaxy's Edge is set up.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the quality of some of this stuff, like he kind of showed off the lightsaber, and they are, as for a $250 lightsaber, pretty good quality. It's just kind of a bummer that the build your lightsaber experience can't be a family experience.
Yeah. I guess I can understand, like, there is limited space and limited employees overseeing the construction of lightsabers, but you think they would be able to, like, kind of manage it so, like, have as many people possible building lightsabers together.
Yeah, it's
not separating parties.
From his video feed, it looked like it was 20 guests with an employee per guest. So okay. It looks like it took a lot of employee manpower.
Yeah.
But a lot of people can be in there at the same time. I mean, I think what may have been a little bit of a better option, some of like the California Adventure experiences, for example, is you could have an experience where you can build a lightsaber, but you don't have to keep it.
Yeah.
And I think there's really great examples throughout, I think, some of the other attractions that are catered towards that, and I think Galaxy's Edge, that the building the lightsaber exhibit would have benefited a lot better had they gone that direction, instead of being solely based on you walking out with a lightsaber at the end of the experience.
Yeah. The full disclosure, I haven't been to Galaxy's Edge, and neither have you, right?
Right.
Yeah, haven't been there yet. But the people I've talked to, they've been there, and they say it's fun, but you only need to spend like an hour or two max there, which I don't think is what Disney wanted or intended, and seems to be kind of a waste of the potential of what a Star Wars land could be. I don't know if that's because Batuu wasn't featured in the original movies, and not even in the sequel trilogy, and like none of the original characters are from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy are there. It's just a few from the sequel trilogy. I don't know why that is. We don't need to necessarily go into speculation about that, but I also kind of wonder if this is because Galaxy's Edge kind of exists as a response to Universal's Harry Potter world, and it seems like they're trying to chase someone else's coattails rather than what Walt would do, is create like an amazing experience that hasn't been seen before, not trying to be someone else, but spending enough money on creating a good experience that all the family could enjoy together. And if you did that, made a quality product, the people would come, And sometimes Disney, what they do is they open a park when it's not at full capacity and they don't have all rides. That happened with California Adventure. It opened, I think, either late 90s or early 2000s, and they're kind of barely seeing money start to come in again, because I think they just said, hey, we have enough rides to make it operational right now. Why don't we do that? And by the California Screamin' ride, they kind of had some knockoff rides you could see anywhere if you went to a traveling fair. And now they have Pixar Pier, and California Adventures kind of finally found its footing and is generating revenue. Same with Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida, where they opened the park and they were going to have a whole fantasy land, but then that was canceled because they wanted to cut costs and just open the park as soon as possible. And it wasn't until they had the ride Expedition Everest and the Pandora Avatar world that Disney's Animal Kingdom is kind of taken off as well and started generating more. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Are they copying Universal?
I mean, I think there's always going to be kind of that park rivalry there. I mean, for Universal Studios, a lot of people's wallets are saying, like, we could do the Disney kind of hopper pass, or we can go to Universal. And, Universal Studios becoming a larger, like, theme park entity as it, has been in the last, 20 years, is becoming more of a compelling option to choose versus Disneyland. But, I mean, as far as what Harry Potter World offers, I don't know. I haven't been there, so I don't really have much to speak to it. I could tell you that one of Galaxy's Edge biggest drawbacks that I think Universal Studios doesn't have a problem with the Harry Potter land is identifying what audience they want in there. If you want kids to enjoy a theme park, kids are more likely to enjoy the rides, they're likely to enjoy building lightsaber, whether they keep it or not.
And interacting with characters, I would say, as well.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to touch on too later. But what we have at Galaxy's Edge is we have one of the few places at Disneyland that sells alcoholic beverages. So, and with there only being, I think, two rides, one's more of kind of an interactive ride, the other one's an actual ride. That's, for a kid, that's a pretty quick visit, and then you're done. And then building a lightsaber, if I was, I would love to do that now, but when I was going to Disneyland pretty frequently, I was like 10 years old, and that'd be the only thing I'd want to do at Disneyland, period, probably, is I want to build that lightsaber, and then I'd learn that, it's $250. I don't have $250 to go enjoy one of probably the coolest experiences that I could have at Disneyland. The characters kind of roam the park, like I'm kind of mixed about. I think the characters that roam Disneyland, period, the most effective ones are the faceless ones, the ones that are based off of cartoon characters, because when you're trying to do a character that has a real face behind it, it's I guess
the Disney princesses are pretty popular, but they're not. I think they roam to an extent, but definitely they have it's an attraction to go see the Disney princesses.
They do both. So they roam, but then they do have set times where they are like assembly line, picture signature, next guest. I think they've got Rey that's roaming, but yeah, it is an event to actually get her to sit down, take pictures, unless you're just going to snap an action shot of Rey kind of roaming around. There was some talk about why there's no droids roaming Galaxy's Edge, and I guess the main reason for it is consumer congestion. So it would cause problems with the pedestrian traffic, which, with how Galaxy's Edge is being received, really isn't an issue as far as I think it's more of an issue of them wanting to budget and maintain smart robots.
Yeah. I think we could put in good space benches, you know?
Yeah, so that was another thing that was mentioned. I can't remember if it was Krabak or if it was Jenny, where they tried to look for a place to sit down, and even the stairs, like they were shooed off of these stairs as they were showpieces. They were like pieces of the world art that they couldn't sit on, and and I don't think there's any place in Disneyland, unless you're gonna be roaming in floral, that's off limits, you know?
Yeah. So, I just hope that Galaxy's Edge, maybe we could see more traditional planets like Hoth or Tatooine or Coruscant, and see more characters, like especially when the Obi-Wan, the Mandalorian, and the Cassian Andor and K2SO streaming series start up. It would be cool to see those characters walk around Galaxy's Edge, and maybe in the future see more legacy characters like Luke, Leia, Han, Padme, Anakin, and all the rest.
Maybe to add to what you're kind of saying, I think that, they're pretty locked in on this Batuu world, but I do agree that, this is technically year one. This is ground zero of Galaxy's Edge, and within the next 10 to 20 years, as kind of Disney pumps out Star Wars films, we're likely to see the evolution of Galaxy's Edge. Hopefully there's more rides. Hopefully there's more free interactive experiences that are catered towards families. Because I think that's Galaxy's Edge's biggest problem, is that, why go to a park that's priced to bring a family in when you can't participate in family activities?
Yeah. And it's a pretty expensive place to go right now. Mm-hmm. So, with hotel prices on top of Disneyland ticket prices.
Right.
So, in a future that may or may not happen, if the Galaxy's Edge were to see the Old Republic, what do you think would happen there? Because I know that Star Wars 2, The Adventure Continues, what they do in that is you're in a spaceship and you fly to different places, and they have multiple planets you can end up on, like Naboo, Tatooine, even Batuu, I believe. Like, there's tons of planets you end up on at the end. But I was kind of thinking, because Disney sometimes takes ride ideas and turns them into other rides, because Disney's Smuggler's Run is pretty similar to Star Tours and the Mission to Mars that is in, I believe, Epcot.
Yeah.
What if they took, like, KotOR, Mission for the Star Forge, and, like, it's random, like, you either are on trying to find the last star map on either Korriban, Tatooine, or Kashyyyk, and then you find the last thing, and then you have to fly to the Star Forge, and then you get involved in a space battle there. How would that sound?
I'm more of a fan of the more interactive experiences of the Disneyland rides. Like, one of my favorite, like the ride that I will not miss when I go visit Disneyland, is the Indiana Jones ride. So I would love to see a Star Wars ride that incorporates that style. Whatever they do in a all-terrain tank, I guess, walking through like a major full planet like Flucia, or even the new planet, the one that Maz is from. There's some like battle that you're participating in that kind of setting. I think that would make a really awesome Star Wars ride. For a roller coaster, they could do like a swoop style ride which matches up really well with high speed twists and turns, a roller coaster style ride, but kind of like you've boarded a swoop bike and maybe you're chasing an Imperial officer or a Sith officer if we're
Sith
talking
trooper, yeah.
Yeah, or if we're going later Skywalker stuff like a First Order trooper, like basically just kind of like a roller coaster, but it's kind of in this idea that you're chasing somebody down. I think that'd be really awesome. For me, I've had my fill of a simulator style ride like Star Tours or like soaring over California, the Mars mission. I think these other styles of rides, there's a lot of creativity freedom that Disney can do to pull something really awesome off.
Yeah, those are some pretty... If there were KotOR characters walking around the parks, do you think they would address at all, like, that these are two different, like, if sequel characters were walking around and there were Old Republic characters walking around and possibly original trilogy and prequel trilogy characters, do you think they would address that they're from different times, or they would just let them walk around and do whatever because it's a theme park?
I think they would just let them walk around. The kids will gravitate towards the characters that they know, and the adults will gravitate towards the characters they know. For them to differentiate from what franchise era they're from, I think maybe a bit counterproductive, since those that would be willing to fork out the money to visit Galaxy's Edge would be pretty big Star Wars fans to know the difference.
Yeah. So if they were to have Knights of the Old Republic characters, I definitely could see Darth Revan walking around, Bastila Shan, Cartho Nassi. It would be cool if they had T3M4 going around the park. Jolie would be fun to see. Zalabar and Mission. Zalabar might be too similar to Chewbacca, but I think they could make it work. And then you can always see, like Sith troopers walking around, because there's always First Order stormtroopers walking around. But one thing I would love to see that Disney's kind of dipped their toes in before is HK-47. What if they did something similar to Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor? I've actually never seen it, but I've kind of heard what Mike Wazowski would, kind of tell jokes. And HK-47 is hilarious. What they would do is, kind of come up with jokes. I think it would always be new jokes, and they would kind of happen organically. And if you just kind of get some good comedian roles, kind of, speaking as, HK-47, obviously HK-47's a robot, so they could get an animatronic to move around like how he would move. But I think that could be a funny attraction because he's hilarious. And maybe they could even do the same thing with K2SO. We need more sassy robots calling people meatbags in the world.
Yeah, I was about to bring up K2SO. I was like, the robot that's funny is K2SO. I mean, you could place him anywhere and he'd probably be entertaining. One of the rides at the MGM Studios in Disney World is it's a Hollywood ride where they kind of take you...
Oh, it's Hollywood Studios now, not MGM.
Oh, so yeah, it's been over 10 years. But there's a ride there that it kind of takes you through kind of Hollywood cinema, and in the middle of the ride, your cart gets taken over.
I think you're talking about the Great Movie Ride,
yeah,
which has unfortunately been discontinued, but it was a great ride. But anyways, continue.
Anyway, one of the funny things about that ride was it would be taken over by a lawless guy, kind of using your cart to his own advantage, and he ends
up a gangster or I think a cowboy.
It kind of depended. It was a little bit different each time, which was kind of...
each time.
Yeah.
Which was fun, because it's like a movie.
Yeah, you kind of get a different experience, which is what they kind of did with Star Tours, where every time you go, it'll be a little bit different. But randomly, if K2SO took over your cart and started just making just completely absurd comments about what you're seeing in front of you, it would be hilarious. It would be really refreshing. It would be funny, and it would bring people back, if they knew that something like that could happen.
Yeah. So any other characters you would want to see if there were to be KotOR characters at Galaxy's Edge?
Oh, you gotta have R2-D2 and C-3PO. I don't know if they're there, but Like,
Well, I was talking Knights of the Old Republic
oh,
characters.
I don't know. There's a lot of characters in KotOR that do kind of mix in with original trilogy characters. Like they have a Hutt in there. I can't remember the Hutt's name, but yeah, that would be pretty confusing with Jabba the Hutt. And I think people would just prefer to have Jabba the Hutt if they do have a Hutt in there. And we talked a little bit about the Wookiee, and pretty similar to Chewbacca. I think there's some characters specific to KotOR that I think the major Star Wars fans would just rather have depictions of the regular characters. But there are some standouts in KotOR that would definitely fit in, like Malik or Revan, Bastila,
Yeah.
and some of these other guys that we know. But again, that's all dependent on if Disney does a KotOR series that is pretty focused on that main cast, or if they just use the world of KotOR and bring in Malik and Revan periodically.
Yeah, you touched on something interesting. Star Wars characters, kind of more like different flavors of various archetypes. Like your Carthonasi kind of shares a corner with Han Solo, who shares a corner with Atton Rand, and then Anakin kind of shares a corner with Revan, and then Bastila kind of shares a corner with Padme, with Leia, with Rey. So it would be interesting to see how that could be handled. But if we were to see Knights of the Old Republic worlds within Batuu, there is Terrace, which is kind of like your Coruscant, but more racist, I guess. They very much are very separate. Like they have their different levels, and they don't like interaction between them. You have Dantooine, which is a kind of like a sunsetty kind of Midwestern world, I would say.
It's
kind of like a plains.
It's a tundra world. It's very much kind of like a African wilderness style world.
Yeah, so just kind of like the Great Plains.
Yeah.
Wherever they are. And then you have Tatooine, which obviously a desert. You have Kashyyyk, which has been featured in, I believe, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and it's obviously Chewbacca's home world. It's a forest world, home of the Wookiees. Manon, which I believe it's like an ocean planet, kind of like Camino, but more giant sharks to be had there. And then Korriban, which is kind of like a world of ruins, kind of dark. It's the ancient Sith world, and a lot of the Sith lords are buried there. You have Lehon, which is like a beach world where a lot of people have crashed, and it's like where the builders lived in KotOR, and it's where you're kind of finding. And then there's obviously the Starforge. So if there were to be any Knights of the Old Republic world in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which one do you think would be most of a hit?
I think the Starforge would be an awesome casual ride. Maybe watching like an assembly construct Sith TIE fighters.
Yeah.
But not have a whole world, but basically be like a facility that's just an enclosed ride. But as far as like a world that I would like to see, I think maybe a couple ideas. Like Dantooine, I think would be really cool, and it'd be even cooler if they move the lightsaber exhibit, the building exhibit, to Dantooine, as Dantooine is a former Jedi Council headquarter world, as well as a place that was force sensitive that you could pick up the kyber crystal to build the lightsaber. That's a world that has the lore to theme up the Jedi.
Yeah.
With the city world, it's one of those things that I think Coruscant is cooler, and I'd just rather see Coruscant.
Me too. I would like to see Dantooine. I think I just have the most fond memories playing Knights of the Old Republic on that world. But the Starforge would be very interesting as well. Dantooine is kind of where your journey begins, and then Starforge is where your journey ends.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember what world this is called, but it was kind of modeled after Camino. But I think this world has a better potential than Camino would.
The ocean world, Manon.
Okay, it's Manon. So they could kind of turn that into kind of like an aquarium exhibit, because all of that world, like none of it is actually on the surface. It's all underwater except for the actual landing docks.
Yeah.
And so if they created like an aquarium touring space that was Manon, it'd be hard to find like good wildlife that would fit in really well with that, unless they went more their animatronic route, which they've done in the past. But I think if they were to pull something like that off, I would totally go to Galaxy's Edge to see something like that.
Yeah. And here is one other question. What if they made a trilogy of Knights of the Old Republic films? What if Batuu appeared in the story?
I think it just depends on how they want to tell the story. If they want to be very specific to what's already been told, it'll be out of place. If they want to tell a whole new story in the world of KotOR, then be my guest.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how the future of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and the possibility of Knights of the Old Republic inhabiting that world. And I guess we'll see how it all evolves. Mm-hmm. This has been Cassia.
And this has been Coden. You can find us at twitch.tv/CodenBahn. Again, that's spelled CODENBAHN. You can also find us at the Twitter handle CodenBahn.
And you can find us at Instagram at Ebonhawk Podcast. This has been episode 3 of the Ebonhawk. Take care of yourselves, meatbags, and may the force be with you. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.